Welcome to the Obvious Podcast. This is episode number 79. I'm Sonny Macon. I'm the CEO at ABC Florida East Coast.
And I'm Peter Daiga, President and CEO at ABC Florida East Coast.
You are listening or watching the Obvious Podcast, where all opinions expressed are our own, unless we say otherwise.
Love the show. We ask you to subscribe on any major podcast platform or watch us in action on YouTube. Follow the Obvious Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, X, and Truth Social. All the links you need are in the show notes. I understand, check the TikTok back and forth and comments too.
TikTok has really, what's the word? Lit up, as the kids would say.
Yeah. And it didn't occur to me until recently, a conversation we were having with one of our volunteer leaders, that they were like, how can you follow the show on TikTok? Well, because TikTok's limited to, a certain number of characters or words or something. So what you do is you go there and you find the most controversial thing said in 20 minutes with a link to subscribing to the podcast. So anyway.
Or you can just go and search The Obvious on TikTok and you can find
do that too. So anyway, reach out to us anytime at theobvious@abceastflorida.com. And if you're enjoying the ride, we ask you to help others find us by leaving a review wherever you listen. So
I do want to say, since we're talking about TikTok, two things. I do want to give a props out to our Mr. Director, who does a really good job cutting clips and putting clips on there. He tends to pick the stuff that is controversial. Not that we're very controversial. We don't say a lot of controversial things on this show.
Yeah. Do we have a contract, by the way, with him? Because I understand, once you get too big for your britches and people realize, man, that's a really well-produced show, then all of a sudden
we're going to have to get some sort of an exclusivity agreement signed.
Yeah. So
along with an NDA. The other thing was, I am very glad that TikTok is now owned by, at least partially by American companies.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Good news there.
Another great achievement.
Right.
In my book. For another show?
Another show.
I got a good long list we can go over. This is an election year, so.
All right.
Sounds like a good future topic.
That's right. The difference between actions and words.
Actually, with the mystery of podcast production, could actually be the topic of a previous podcast.
Yeah.
We don't even know it.
I wish we had picked the subject matter for a 58th episode, because at ABC we're celebrating our 58th year. 58th year.
Yeah, this chapter.
This chapter, yeah. I mean, the national organization is
76 years.
76 years.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So at 58, by the way.
Happy Friday.
Happy.
What are we talking about today? I'm going to do this.
All right, there we go. We're talking about, that's Peter's mystery.
I got to figure out how to do this better. I think that's it. I think that's the key.
We could do a whole topic on how to ring a bell.
First person to email theobvious@abceastflorida.com about what they think the bell is. The first person.
You will get this beautiful Obvious mug or T-shirts with our name. By the way, what do you think of that little banner we have behind us?
Yeah, it's clever.
Looks good, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Looks great.
People worked very hard on that.
It looks great. You never think you look good in whatever.
I mean, it's a cartoon. It doesn't really make a difference.
Okay, you got a point. It's a cartoon. So it looks great.
All right, so today's episode.
Actually.
Good. I do too. I think it's very, you'll be seeing it.
Get serious.
Oh, hold on, before we get serious, if you're going to be going to ABC events, you will be seeing that. And if you don't, let us know, and then we'll have to talk to some of our staff.
Look for the trading cards coming to it.
There's no trading cards coming.
It'd be kind of cool.
That would be cool. But people do still.
We have our director of communications and our director.
That's
director
right.
And our,
We could put the entire ABC team on it.
Don't worry, this is not going to our head at all. So we have a serious topic we wanted to talk about today, right?
I do. So what really got me thinking was the fact that since we're celebrating our 58th anniversary this year, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things ABC is really well known for and famous for is its political advocacy. I mean, I don't want to use the term political power or political capital, but our advocacy.
All right.
Has been,
and it's pertinent. It's an election year and some really big elections. So two in particular in Florida.
Governors.
We have our governor and one of our senators, I think, that we have.
Oh yeah,
this year.
Ashley Moody
is U.S. senator.
That's
so
right.
One or two from the state, and then of course all the congressional people, all the House members, a third of the Senate members. So anyway, it's a big year. It's a part of our, I use this term a lot, pedigree, right? It's about who we are and whatnot. So
here's my hypothesis, and you can agree or disagree or take it apart or solidify it, right?
Okay.
The ABC's brand, ABC is political power, ABC's influence is rooted in the fact that over the last 50 years, ABC has taken a stand on issues. That we don't dilly-dally or wishy-washy. We don't ever both sides an issue.
Can't say it enough, in my opinion.
Right.
We've said it a lot, but yes, absolutely, 100%.
Right.
You're much more respected. You know, we've talked about the fact that some leaders at very high places in this country have called ABC the Marine Corps of, you know, that's not because the Marine Corps of American politics. It's not because we don't take a stand. It's not because we're not courageous.
Right.
It's not because we're not first in fights or battles, you know, sticking our finger to the wind and finding out what direction to go.
Right.
So
what I
all
want
those things are very strong, you know, I don't know, tendencies, you know, or very strong pulls.
It's part of the DNA,
you know.
And I think one of the things we don't often talk about is one of the biggest benefits of consistently taking a stand, which is consistent with the values of the organization, is the fact that even those who disagree with you will respect you because they always know where you stand, right? Because I've had lots of conversations with lots of politicians who know they will not get our support, but they respect the fact that we're taking a principled position.
And I've always been a believer, and I'll say it today, and if they're the type that are going to hold it against you and be vengeful or vindictive, quite frankly, I didn't ever want them as a friend. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I feel.
Well, they also have short careers. They don't last long.
Agreed.
Right?
So
they are in and out very quickly, and somehow the American voter knows that, right? I mean, there's exceptions. I mean, I can think of Chuck Schumer. Like,
so anyway, it's being a big election year where we do a lot. Right. We're not just your typical. We've talked a lot about this organization that makes its $500 or $1,000 contribution and then moves on. Yeah. We not only go beyond that, but we're also. And I can think of other organizations that, again, stick the finger in the wind, whoever they think is going to be the front runner. I mean, there were some construction associations that, endorsed, Hillary in the past. And, when there were, the choices were much more clear. Right. So, but they were sticking their finger in the wind because I don't know how many people realize or recall the prevailing thought was she was going to walk away with things, and so it's like we better get on board, right? I mean, that's the thinking. That's the kind of thinking that generally has not been associated with us.
That is the opposite of taking a stand.
Right. So in any event, and it's probably important to reiterate those things. Why is it important? For us, as an organization, we wanted to talk a little bit about because we love talking about governance here.
We do. If you haven't seen episode number 77. That will give you some insight into how we do governance.
Yep. So anyway, I didn't know. Was there any other direction you immediately wanted to go in? Because I wanted to ask you, like for example, why do we have agendas for our board meetings, for our committee meetings? Why does government bodies, have agendas? Why does anyone have an agenda for a meeting? What's the point of the agenda?
Well, before you answer that, or before I attempt to answer it, I think that question is kind of related to what I was going to ask, which is how do you take a stand?
Okay.
Right? How do you determine what issues matter? How do you determine what issues don't matter? Where does that sort of feedback come from? I think it's related to your question.
You're asking me, how we determine that?
Yeah.
How we take a stand? Mm-hmm. So, do you want me to get in the real weeds?
No, you can get into the real weeds. You can kind of start with our sort of merit-based philosophy. You can start there and
so
get into the weeds. Let's go.
Everything is for us is based on alignment with our values and our mission statement.
Right.
Which again, it's not just a statement that was established years ago that isn't periodically reaffirmed, which we do. So and tweak and whatnot. So until that's changed, that should be the guiding factor. In most of these decisions. Now, for us, it's, when it comes to elected officials, if you have an incumbent running for a race, that incumbent's going to have a record. And what we should be concerning ourselves with is how well is that record aligned with our priorities,
Yeah.
Not any one member's priorities, quite frankly, but the priorities of the association, the priorities of the industry as a whole, right? As established, in our committees and board meetings and whatnot. So, any elected, any incumbent official, you're going to want to do that. When races are more open, you don't have an incumbent, you don't necessarily have a record to look at, then you need to ask them.
Yeah.
And we have our own questionnaires, where we try to get at. And again, it's true. And some people, every year when we have candidate interviews and whatnot, they can lie, quite frankly.
Of course.
It's not difficult to find out where ABC is coming from. And if you want, again, this gets back to an earlier point, if they're willing to do that, quite frankly, they'll never get our support again.
Right.
But in any event, the point of all that is just trying to ascertain how well aligned they are with our values and our mission statement, right, and our objectives, whether they be at the local level, the state level, or the federal level. So, what am I missing?
How do people know what our values are?
Well, they certainly can ask. They certainly can look it up. They can look at
see.
it behind us.
They can see it.
They can read our bylaws. They can look at our code of ethics.
Our values are not hidden. I mean,
not hidden.
they're plastered everywhere.
So, at the website.
On the website.
Anyway,
thank you, Mr. Producer.
So yes, the values are certainly there.
Yep.
I think people know about the mission to help our members win work and deliver that work safely, ethically, and profitably. The merit shop is at the core, of our mission. Meritocracy, if you will.
That's right. Competition is good for everybody.
Yep. So anyway,
so
did that get at the?
That it did. So that leads me to your question: why do we have agendas, right? And when you were talking about that, when you asked that question, my first thought was, our board meetings, our committee meetings, every meeting we have here with our volunteer leaders has an agenda. So I would love for you to tell me, why do we have an agenda?
Sure, it's great. And, it's not, sometimes you do something as a best practice or as something that, really goes well beyond ABC or even the nonprofit world or business world. But, just organizing human behavior, in a lot of ways. So, and you may do it even though some of the principal reasons why you do it may never come up, but the real reason for having an agenda is so that your meetings are organized.
Right.
You don't want them to devolve into chaos.
Certainly.
And that's why, the agenda should be coordinated with, the staff and the volunteer leadership, the chair of the committees or chair of the board, in developing an agreed upon, process and agenda for that meeting.
Right.
Because otherwise it's, you could have someone bring a particular interest, that wasn't agendaed and can derail the meeting. And it happens a lot, quite frankly.
Because it's not just, obviously agendas aren't unique to us, but we are cognizant of the fact that we are taking up the time of volunteer leaders. And you want that time that they are here to be productive, right? So
correct. And rewarding.
Yep.
And if you get into just a devolution of, whatever. So in any event, so that's the real number one. Okay. Top of the whatever, why, I think you have an agenda. Now, that doesn't mean, if you want to make sure something's discussed, then that's why you have a chairman. That's why you have staff. You make sure you reach out to them and say, hey, I would like to. And, we can plan for it accordingly, time-wise, and also whatever kind of preparation needs to go to actually either have that conversation or have it at an appropriate time. So that's the point, and you want to stay on agenda so you get through the purpose of the meeting and things that you wanted to achieve, and whatnot. So
now, how would you handle like a volunteer leader who isn't listening to the chairman or listening to staff or?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough question, over the years. So, somebody that doesn't listen at all, has, unfortunately,
or their own personal, pardon the pun, but their own personal agendas.
That's exactly right. There's a reason why there's a pun about it, because they've got their own personal agenda. They don't have the group's agenda,
or the organizational
agenda. So, and by the way, we've oftentimes in our agendas, you might put comments to the good and welfare. You might have just a general section, which is fine. If you want to. That would be an appropriate place to have that, and it would have, obviously limitations as well. So we, for the most part, though, like most organizations, operate under a set of rules, Robert's Rules of Order. The chairman has an awful lot of power, and people have to respect that power, be recognized by the chair, and can be called out of order if it's something that's not on the agenda or put into the appropriate part of the agenda. We'll talk about that later when it comes to open business or whatever. And putting whatever limitations need to be put on there, time-wise. So, in any event, agendas aren't just a checkbox. Right. There's a practical application of why we have agendas at meetings and
like GPS, right? So it tells you where you're going.
Sure. Yep.
And then how do you handle different political opinions? So in the sense of how do you handle let's say 4 people want to endorse one guy, 5 people want to endorse another guy, 4 people don't endorse anyone.
And we've talked a little bit about that here in this show. Did I ring the bell earlier, by the way?
You did.
Okay.
You did.
I just want to make sure because I could be ringing it throughout a lot, I think.
You could be ringing it this whole show.
So that's right. We asked people to email us, didn't we? Okay.
We did. Yeah, and they got a $25 gift card.
Amex gift card. So first person, time stamped whenever it comes in. So we've talked, I think, on and off today and in previous podcasts even, I think about.
Oh, you know what? I would love for you to define conflict of interest because people have one perception of what it means.
Sure.
And the reality is sort of very different. So I would love for you to define it.
So the general perception of conflict of interest, people's attention usually turns towards financial. It's like, am I getting some kind of a deal or steering some kind of insider deal? And sure, that's oftentimes what you want to keep in mind. But basically, anything can be a conflict of interest if you're putting your own personal interests above the organization's interests. Or the interest.
Say that again. That was actually a profound definition.
Well, you're putting your own personal interests ahead of the organization's interests,
and it has nothing to do with money, just your personal interest.
Doesn't have to have a single thing to do with money.
Okay.
So to answer your question about, we all have different opinions about candidates. We all have different opinions about the timing of political endorsements.
Yeah.
We all have different political opinions about process, perhaps.
Yeah.
We all have different opinions about the most effective ways of exerting influence, or growing influence.
Yep.
The real question is not, about personal opinions, but what's in the best interest and pursuing the strategic goals that have been established for the organization, right? So anyway, that being said, let's put a little meat or flesh on that bone.
Let's do it because we're running out of time.
Are we? Oh my gosh. I think a additional conversation we have to have in all this and conflict of interest and whatnot is also about the role, if you will, of staff.
Yeah.
The role of professionals that we may hire. We have an awful lot. Well, I would say an awful lot. It is really an awful lot, but we have a significant number of significant level of commitment to different contract lobbyists as an organization.
Let me interrupt you. I think we should probably do a part 2 of this episode because I think there's a lot more to talk about, and I certainly don't want to rush us, and I don't want to rush our audience. So let's do that. We'll come back and we'll do a part 2 next Friday, and then
we'll talk a little bit more about the role of professional staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
You spend money as an organization, maybe hiring expertise, to give opinions and input and whatnot, and what the role of that is in the process. We'd like to talk a little bit about that as well.
Right.
So we'll do that in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll do it in the next episode. All right. Well, thank you for listening and honoring us with your time. We'll look forward to sharing part 2 of this episode with you next week.
A 2-parter. Pretty cool. So for comments, send us an email at theobvious@abcflorida.com.
And don't forget, if you know the bell.
First email we get on this episode, you can get a $25 Amex gift card.
That's right.
All right. Until next time. Ciao.
Take care.